The cycle of liberation. From compliance to conscious change, liberation begins with a shift in consciousness and culminates in collective transformation. Bobby Harrow, 2001. Nature of the cycle of liberation. The cycle of liberation is a conceptual framework describing how individuals break free from internalized oppression, challenge dominant ideologies, and engage in social justice action. It is the transformative process through which people recognize their conditioning, disrupt the status quo, reconstruct liberatory ways of thinking, being, and relating. Unlike the cycle of socialization, which reinforces systemic oppression through conformity, fear, and silence, the cycle of liberation charts a path toward agency, accountability, and solidarity. 2. Key processes in the cycle of liberation. The model unfolds across interconnected stages, often nonlinear, each representing a shift in awareness and practice. Waking up, critical consciousness disruption. A disorienting dilemma or deep discontent triggers critical self-reflection. Can be caused by exposure to injustice, a personal experience, education, or witnessing others resist. Example: a student realizes their curriculum excludes Indigenous perspectives, prompting critical questioning. Getting ready, deep self-reflection. Individuals examine their internalized beliefs, biases, and privileges. This involves naming discomfort, unlearning misinformation, and interrogating complicity. Example: a teacher confronts their unconscious gender bias in grading. Reaching out, dialoguing and building alliances. Engaging in courageous conversations with others, both similar and different from oneself. Seeking support, guidance, and solidarity from communities committed to justice. Example: forming or joining critical peer groups, affinity spaces, or community dialogues. Building community collective accountability. Relationships become grounded in mutual trust, critical feedback, and a shared commitment to justice. Focus on collective healing, strategizing, and visioning liberatory futures. Example: students and faculty co-creating inclusive curricula and policies. Coalescing, organizing, and taking action. Mobilizing around specific issues through campaigns, protests, policy change, or artistic expression. This is where resistance becomes visible and systemic. Example: organizing against campus racism, advocating for equitable hiring. Creating change, structural transformation. The system is impacted. Policy shifts, narratives change, new practices are institutionalized. There is an emergence of new norms grounded in justice and inclusion. Example: institutional adoption of decolonial pedagogies and student co-governance. Maintaining, sustaining the struggle. Continued reflection, healing, and action to prevent co-optation or burnout. Liberation is not a destination, it is an ongoing practice. Example: integrating social justice into everyday teaching, leadership, and research. 3. Consequences of the cycle of liberation. Individual transformation. Emergence of a critical, confident, and compassionate self. Reduction of internalized oppression, guilt, and fear. Greater sense of purpose and integrity. Collective empowerment. Creation of new spaces for marginalized voices. Formation of sustained alliances across difference. Building of counter-hegemonic movements. Systemic change. Disruption of oppressive policies and practices. Normalization of inclusive democratic decision-making. Shifts in institutional culture and power dynamics. 4. Relevance in transformative education. The cycle of liberation is deeply aligned with the ethos of transformative education, which seeks to produce not just knowledge but conscious ethical change agents. Pedagogical design. Informs critical pedagogy, FRERE, liberatory learning, hooks, and decolonial education. Encourages classrooms to become spaces of reflection, dissent, and reconstruction. Curriculum development. Promotes integration of social justice issues, intersectionality, lived experience, and counter-narratives. Fosters curricula that teach both critique and action. Educator identity. Encourages educators to reflect on their own liberation journey. Cultivates reflexivity, humility, and accountability in educational leadership. 5. Relevance in social justice research. The cycle of liberation shifts research from passive analysis to emancipatory praxis. Transformative methodologies. Supports participatory action research, feminist, decolonial, and indigenous methods. Research becomes co-created with communities, not imposed on them. Ethical imperatives. Encourages positionality statements, consent-based inquiry, and relational ethics. Resists extractive knowledge production. Scholarly activism. Scholars become agents of change. Research is used to amplify struggle, propose alternatives, and dismantle injustice. 6. Final reflection. From knowing to becoming. The cycle of liberation is not merely theoretical, it is a lifelong commitment to embodying justice. It calls for the integration of knowledge, empathy, courage, and action. In a world that rewards conformity and silence, the cycle demands intellectual defiance, ethical imagination, and collective dreaming. Liberation is both deeply personal and insistently collective. No one is free until we all are. Happy learning!